Let's bring in New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. He's the top Democrat, the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Wolf.
So what's your response to the president actually bragging during that closed-door fundraiser in St. Louis to Republican big shots about not knowing trade facts and admitting lying to the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
Well, it's pretty outrageous that you conduct yourself with one of your key allies in the world in a way in which you lie to them boldface. And they know that you're lying to them because they know what the trade realities are. And it undermines credibility, not just with the Canadians, but globally when stories like this come out, that you could be engaged with a foreign head of state and have the President of the United States bold-facedly lying to them, and that undermines our relationships in the world. And when you are talking about something else at some other time, maybe some security agreement that you want, the person who you're going to be speaking to is going to be wondering, well, is he telling me the truth or is he lying to me?
During that fundraiser in St. Louis, the president also took direct aim at South Korea over trade, threatening to pull U.S. troops, about 30,000 U.S. troops, out of South Korea unless that trade deficit with South Korea doesn't go away. Is that smart, especially now on the eve, potentially, of the president's meeting with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un?
No, it's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my 26 years of dealing with foreign policy between the House and the Senate. Look, at a time in which you have a critical high-wire act that the president is conducting in this engagement with North Korea without any safety net underneath, no preparation whatsoever on these talks, to suggest any inkling that you might move away from your security commitments to South Korea is to send all the wrong messages, not only to North Korea, but to our allies globally. And so that's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen.
Let me get your reaction to the White House, the Treasury Department now, and the Trump administration finally announcing today sanctions against Russia for its meddling in the U.S. presidential elections. Do you believe the sanctions announced today go far enough?
Look, they're welcomed, and I've been calling for those sanctions from some time. I mean, the reason Congress passed in the Senate 98-2 those sanctions, both on Russia, of course, Iran, and North Korea, was to get the administration implemented. So it's far past time that they did it. But they largely sanctioned individuals that had already been previously sanctioned by the Obama administration. So I'm looking for a more robust response. For example, that company Glafset that was identified in Special Counsel Mueller's indictment of the Russians, that's an entity that should be gone after to the sanctions regime. And there is a series of provisions of the law that are pretty mandatory that the administration has not pursued against Russia on financial institutions, on arms transfers, and other things. So there is a much more robust response that should be had. And the president should be leading a whole-of-government response to Russia, not only for what they did to us in our elections and what they are doing globally and undermining democracies in other elections and what they recently did in Great Britain. It is a continuing reality from all our intelligence agencies. They continue to seek to undermine our democracy and our elections. And Putin only understands strength, and that strength comes through a robust response.
Yeah, they finally did begin implementing some sanctions today, even though, as you point out correctly, the sanctions legislation passed the Senate 98-2 last summer, last August, I think 419-3 in the House. The president didn't like it. He reluctantly signed it into law only because he knew he couldn't override a congressional veto. But finally, the U.S. has now gone ahead, the Trump administration, with these sanctions. Let me get your thoughts on another development that's unfolding right now. Just in, the former FBI deputy director, Senator Andrew McCabe, we're now told he's currently at the Justice Department making his case why he should not be fired. He's retiring at the end of this week, as you know, but there's now some suggestion the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, might fire him only days away from his retirement. He would lose his pension because of misleading others in the Justice Department in the course of the Hillary Clinton investigation. What's your reaction to this?
Well, I mean, it's a case of first impression for me, but I'll just say that it seems retaliatory. At the end of the day, the man is going to retire. He has served, as I understand, honorably for a very long period of time, and it's just retaliatory to fire him days before that retirement would take place. So this is the type of circumstances that has been going on in this administration, where you speak out against them or you act in a way in accordance with the law, but that's not satisfactory to the president, that you end up with a retaliatory response. And it's just pretty outrageous if we're going to be promoters of the rule of law, not only here at home, but across the world.
Yeah, he served 22 years in the FBI. He announced his resignation a few weeks ago to take effect at the later this month. And now only days away, he might be fired. And as I say, he would lose that pension. Let's move on to some other sensitive issues while I have you, Senator. Let's talk about the president's cabinet changes. His nomination of CIA Director Mike Pompeo to become the next Secretary of State. Your committee will have to confirm him, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Gina Haspel to become the next CIA Director. Listen to your colleague, Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. He's already made up his mind on both of these nominations. Listen to this.
My opposition to her is over her direct participation in interrogation and her gleeful enjoyment at the suffering of someone being tortured. My announcement today is that I will oppose both Pompeo's nomination and Haspel's nomination.
Where do you stand on these two nominees?
Well, I'm going to give them both their day. On Pompeo, I look forward to a robust vetting and a robust hearing on his nomination. There's much different skill sets to be the CIA director, where you're ultimately, creating the opportunities for intelligence, having covert operations and executing enemies, than being a diplomat, the lead diplomat for the United States of America. There's definitely two different skill sets, number one. Number two is, I want to hear what his views are on some critical issues that the United States is facing globally. What does he view this engagement with North Korea directly? What preparation is there going to be to make sure that that can actually be a successful result, versus the president just having a meeting, saying he walked away, solved the problem, and then it all collapses? What is the reality of his view on the Iran nuclear deal, and in fact, what happens if the president walks away? What is the follow-on to that? Because that has critical challenges to it. Where is he on the engagement that we need more robustly against Russia for all the malign activities that it has done? Those are just a few of the questions that he's going to have to answer. And as to Haspel, well, I have serious questions and concerns about her seeming unlimited commitment to interrogation techniques and potential torture that I think from people like John McCain, who was a victim of torture himself as a prisoner of war, that it doesn't work at the end of the day for the purposes of our intelligence gathering, and that it actually acts as a negative for us globally. I got to respect somebody like John McCain, who was a prisoner of war, went through such torture, and understands the realities of it. So she's going to have a real problem for me. Pompeo, we'll see how he answers the questions on these critical issues.
I know you voted against this confirmation as CIA director, but you have an open mind as far as Secretary of State?
I will. I mean, I believe that there is a vetting process for a reason, and he's going to have to answer a lot of tough questions. I've only mentioned a few of them. I'm sure some of his activities at the CIA, whether he believes in a robust State Department, in which under Secretary Tillerson, and particularly under this administration, diplomacy is not something that they value, as is evidenced by the emaciated State Department we have, the constant cuts, the hollowing out of our diplomatic corps, some institutional knowledge that's incredibly important with the challenges we have in the world, and some other questions. So I look forward to how he answers those, and then I'll create a judgment.
Senator Menendez, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.